it's nice to be both a gamer and a musician, and then to be able to experience them both at the same time. A lot of us, reminisce over this stuff, and it's kind of, it touches you in your heart to hear this kind of stuff being performed by musicians.
They're an incredibly powerful experience in that they are this amalgam of all these different art forms. You have sculpture and drawing and script writing, if that's applicable, and music, and all of these different art forms are combined into something that's greater than the sum of its parts. And the fact that music is part of that experience means that when you play those games, that music becomes part of your life experience, because you sort of live through the games while you're playing them.
Good music, when you hear it, it doesn't matter whether you're a classical musician or rock or jazz or anything like that. Good music, and things like Mario is just full of just really, actually, legitimately great music, and so is I conducted a suite from Kirby last semester. Zelda is chock full of fantastic themes, and not even in a way where you would think, they're good for video game themes. They're just legitimately great themes and great music.
4 for 4 is 17. One more shot. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and.
With this stuff, it's so important to try and access just the emotions that people remember feeling when they're hearing this music in the game, and that's a cool thing to try and tap into as a conductor on the podium. Just being up there and being like, this is what's happening in the game, and this is what we remember feeling. So feel that when you're playing the music, and that's something that we sometimes don't remember to do naturally when we see all this black on the page, and we're just like, okay, no, next thing.
Around my sophomore year, I attended a music entrepreneurship lecture because I wanted to write music for video games, and I didn't really know how to go about handling that from the business side of things. So at this lecture, I mentioned that, and the person giving the lecture was like, "Have you heard of this game orchestra at University of Maryland?" And I hadn't, and so I checked them out, and I thought to myself, well, if they can do it, why can't we do it? I mean, we have the music school here with a whole bunch of great musicians, and just wandering the halls, every once in a while I hear people talking about games or game music, and it sort of seemed like the interest was there, and the orchestra could happen. So why not?
We're very much founded on or based upon inclusion, which is to say that we will take pretty much all comers. I mean, I freely admit that I am not really the most competent musician. I mean, I've been playing trumpet since late elementary school, but it was more for something to do. I mean, I'm not great at it or anything. I think one of the big challenges is kind of building an orchestra around the idea of that inclusion, and I think it's a really cool thing that the orchestra has going for it, and just the idea that it's a great musical outlet for people who probably otherwise wouldn't be doing music in college. I was never really interested in music all that much, even going through high school and stuff, but this kind of opened up a lot of possibilities for me, and I think a lot of other people too.
When I was was in high school, I had this drive to arrange Corneria from Super Smash Bros. Melee, which I ended up doing here. So I started trying to do that and it didn't work, and then I had the opportunity here to set that for orchestra, and I immediately joined in the first semester, got the feel for it, and did it.
Well, video game music is definitely a fusion of technology and also musicality, especially in the recent games. You have like these layers of music, right? So like when you go to one scene, like this, almost like a background music-ish things start, like string sustaining and stuff, right? But then when the enemy shows up, then like on the top of it, like the percussion begins, and like there's all kinds of tricks you can do, and you don't do that for films or any other kinds of games because everything else is linear, right? There's a definite start and definite end.
One of the ironies of sound's contribution is that I feel like usually if I do my job right, most people don't notice because they think, well, it becomes one thing. The brain puts the sound with the visual when in fact they're very separate things and made by completely separate people. But if you get sound right, people just have an experience when they see it or hear it. And usually when you create a sound for something like, say, it's a building falling down or something, you would go into the library and you find several different elements that you want to have. Maybe one is just the glass, maybe one is the rock crumbling down or girders bending. And then you take those into software and blend them in the way that you want. And often you have a visual reference, like a rendering from one of the other departments that you're working from. As the visuals are evolving, you're kind of trying to make sure your sounds match what you're seeing and really sell that. Because in our case, it's I mean, people do the same thing in films, but in our case, it's all animated. So you really want the sound to help enhance that and sell it, so you see it and you feel like it's, you have that experience when you see it.
Tienen que estar cerca. Ellos no pueden haber ido muy lejos.
When you're composing for games, you kind of have to guess kind of like a general feel that the game is supposed to have at that given time. So I think that maybe that kind of ties in with why people like game music, which is that it rather than capturing a specific scene or specific events, it's more trying to capture like a specific feel for like a certain environment that you're in or a certain situation that you're in, regardless of what exactly is happening at that given time. I mean, you can just kind of sit back and kind of almost like imagine the scene going along with it, regardless of what the track is actually about or what it was actually meant for.
Journey is this incredibly artful, powerful experience. By the end of it, I just felt like I had gone through something incredible.
Journey had already racked up this immensely high sort of emotional score. Just in that, the majority of the kind of awards season, which ended up being this just monstrous freight train, was kind of a whole thing of its own. But because the Grammy nomination came on December 5th, which was right at the front end of a lot of the awards season. So the main way in which the game had kind of been so intensely emotional in its experience was from player feedback. which had been off the charts from anything I had ever expected at all. And then there's like, you know, hundreds and hundreds of emails from people saying things like, you know, like my father died of cancer, and this game was the last, like, we played this game together, it was the last thing we ever did together, and so, you know, and I think without this game I wouldn't be able to kind of emotionally cope with what happened, and getting not one, not a dozen, but like hundreds of emails of that level of intensity.
The interesting thing about the video game music is just it has so many more facets than we're used to thinking about. And in that respect, I think normal classical music, symphonic, you know, chamber, all this stuff, actually has something to learn about the collaborative aspect that this stuff requires.
One of the things about video game music that I find so fascinating is that it is the only music that I know is inherently interactive.
Music that is driven, or at least informed by, the thoughts and whims and decisions of the listener has no precedent of any kind at any point in all of human history. So imagine if you're a musician giving a performance and you're able to somehow receive feedback from your audience instantaneously from their skull to yours. It's impossible to imagine music not being even just instinctively interactive in an experience like that. So it could very well be that what we're at, you know, the foundation of right now is going to be the basis of like 99% of music. But I feel like something like that is possible, and if it is, we're at the very baby step beginnings of that right now.